In today's video, I want to talk about HS2. It stands for High Speed Railway 2 and is the unwanted sequel to High Speed Railway 1, which if you don't know is more commonly known as Eurotunnel. Now I have already covered the history of that in a previous video, but just to summarise, the government ended up choosing a not very innovative option in order to please the greatest number of people and with the lowest environmental impact. But HS2 is very interesting in that they decided on this big infrastructure project, but with a new twist of not really pleasing anyone. To understand how we got to that, we have to go back to 2008 when the banking crisis happened and, well, long story short, a global recession took place. Now, whoever is in charge when recessions happen, they usually look pretty stupid and face a lot of criticism, but their reputation can be somewhat salvaged if they have a good recovery plan. The way to do that is promise some massive infrastructure project that will spread jobs and prosperity around the country. So to try and distract from all the public money being given away to financial institutions, the Department of Transport proposed a sequel to Eurotunnel, which was HS2. The idea being that Britain's rail capacity on the west coastline was approaching maximum and something needed to be done about it. But before the government could make much headway, they lost the election and so the responsibility changed hands to the next government. They put this idea out for review and public consultation, and when they did so, protesters claimed there was no business case, no environmental case, and there was no money to pay for it. However, the review concluded that with some route alterations, the project was still worthwhile to go ahead. The planned route was from London to Birmingham in Phase 1, and then Phase 2 would see it branch off to Leeds and Manchester. Unfortunately, existing lines were unable to be expanded without significant disruption, so new lines would have to be built, and unfortunately the land proposed was occupied by wildlife and ancient woodland. However, it was argued that the environmental benefits of the rail system were to help the UK meet its longer climate targets, and so the future won. But of course, this didn't stop the protest and legal injunctions, so with such unrest, decisive opposition and a large potential backlash, the prudent thing to do was hold an independent inquiry into the plans, and to everyone's delight, they did. Now the thing about an independent inquiry is that it should be independent. The people involved should be impartial and ultimately weigh up the evidence based on the facts. So to chair this important inquiry, they chose Douglas Oakervey. Now, unfortunately, he wasn't as independent to the project as many might have hoped, in that he was the former chairperson of High Speed 2 Limited, the company in charge of HS2. Now, whether or not he was impartial and able to look at the facts objectively is another issue, but it certainly doesn't look good from wherever you stand. Now, obviously, I'm not claiming that he was in any way biased, but it turns out I don't need to. You see, before his independent report was published, his deputy openly distanced himself from its findings as he stated there was bias in favouring the project despite the evidence. So what you ended up with was a controversial project backed by a controversial inquiry that resulted in the Prime Minister giving the green light to go ahead and build HS2. The report wasn't completely useless as it did manage to update the public on the new estimated cost. It had jumped from £32 billion to over £100 billion. Now I don't know about you, but £100 billion is not a number I can even fathom. It is so beyond my understanding of money that it just seems like a made-up number. To try and understand it, I compared it to the furlough scheme that saw the Chancellor pay 80% of millions of workers' salaries. Well, after an entire year of them doing that, the total was £58 billion, which is almost half of what the HS2 project is going to cost. It is amazing to me that so many people have been paid to stay at home and watch Netflix, and the cost of doing that is not even close to the cost of this project. Now, I know it is very easy to criticise these large infrastructure contracts, but considering there was only ever one option on the table, it does make me wonder if there was maybe another option we could have at least considered. Well, in the same year that HS2 was proposed, tech giant Google also made an announcement that it was going to build an autonomous car. Now, I know it seems like the stuff of fantasy, but considering the end date for Phase 1 of HS2 is 2033, is it really that far-fetched? When you're planning projects 20 to 30 years in advance, you really have to think what might be around in that time period. To invest in something that already exists is like buying an original iPhone in preparation for all your communication needs in 2033. 7 years after Google's announcement, Heathrow Airport introduced autonomous pods to transport passengers from their cars into the terminal. Every year, more and more car manufacturers are adding in autonomous features to help them improve safety, and even the Google driverless car currently operates as a taxi on public streets under the name of Waymo. It's really not that far-fetched an idea that this could be the future of our transportation networks. As a country, we had the opportunity to invest in something that would innovate and be an example to the rest of the world. Instead, what we have is something that I'm sure will do a lot for the congestion on the West Coast line, but just like Euroroute, I will forever think, what if? And with that, I want to say thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.